Let's go out to Roanoke, Virginia, and talk to the great and wonderful Rachel. What's up, Rachel?
Hey, Dr. John, how are you?
So good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for taking my call.
Awesome. Thank you for calling. What's up?
Yes, and as I'm talking to you, you realize that I've been practicing my questions to you in my head all morning. So apologies for that.
Hey, practice is good. Practice is good.
Yes.
Go for it. What's up?
All right. Okay, so my husband and I have been married for 15 years. And over the years, whenever I have conflict with anybody from his side of the family, so whether it's mother-in-law or any of the 4 sister-in-laws or anybody from his side of the family, I tend to channel the frustration or the anger from those conflicts towards my husband. Even though it has nothing to do with him or he has no involvement in those conflicts, I channel it towards him. And the way I justify is, hey, he's part of that family, so he deserves this kind of treatment from me. And I know it's totally crazy, totally unfair. So my question to you is, how do I channel my frustration away from people I love? And I guess even more importantly, how do I get it out of my system is my question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that you're operating on a bad model. It's a very, I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. This is like, I'm trying to say this clinically. It's a very child-based response. I'm mad about this over here, so I'm going to spit on you. This thing happened to me from this guy. I'm going to kick you. Right? Or you see kids, they stub their toe at a door and then they punch a chair, right? Like, I'm going to go get that thing. That's a very childish response. It comes from innate. So the bad model is that the get it out model has been proven faulty. It's not real. There was there was decades where they would tell you to, quote unquote, get your anger out. It's a thing you have to get out. You have to, they have these. They even have them now. They got smash rooms and yell rooms, and I have to tell you what you did. I got to say all these things. I have to get this out of my body. What the research tells us is what it does is it actually reinforces those neural pathways and makes them stronger. It makes the connections more reinforced. So every time you take your anger out on your husband, your body reinforces that as the appropriate way of making yourself feel better, which is to hit somebody else, to spit on somebody else. And the only way to break that, there's not a way of getting it out. The only way to break that is to grieve it, which I don't think you've ever done, and decide, I'm not going to act this way. And eventually over time, you teach your body different levels, different ways to deal with that stress, whether it's going for a walk, whether that is writing in a journal, whether that's playing your guitar, whether that's going dancing, any number of things. But you have to make the choice. I'm going to stop hitting my husband for other things people are doing. I'm going to stop spitting in his face for something his father did. Now, anytime somebody asks me this, I always have to ask, has he done the work of drawing firm boundaries with his family?
He has, yes.
Okay.
We have over the years, yeah.
And they continue to violate those boundaries?
It's not all the time. It's, some things never change. So we have to constantly kind of remind them.
Hold on. You don't at all. You don't at all. What you actually have to do is to cut off contact because they are opting out of relationship with you. And what you really want is you want both and. You want to tell them what your boundaries are and have them honor them, and they are not. And that makes them not real boundaries. That makes y'all just annoying chihuahuas just barking a lot.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like usually.
Yeah, and instead of saying, okay, we've been very clear we won't talk about X. We've been very clear we don't like it when you use that language. We've been very clear we can't travel on days A, B, and C because of whatever. And y'all have opted out of relationship with us. And it breaks our heart. We're really sad about that.
And I hate going that route because then it's kind of you're losing your family, right? When
your family left you. They left you, Rachel. You're just continuing to let them drag you behind the truck, down the street. And you're getting mad at them about the road rash, but the whole time you're hanging onto the rope.
Yeah.
That's where I say you have to grieve this whole thing. Often that feeling that I have to get this out, that's often not anger, that's grief. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was supposed to get married, and I was going to be best friends with his mom, and me and his dad. He was going to treat me like another daughter, and we were going to tell inappropriate jokes and laugh and have inside jokes, and none of that happened.
Very true.
You have to spend some time being really freaking heartbroken about that, and you haven't. And when you skip over grief, when you skip over heartbreak, it comes out as rage. And you just start hitting the person closest to you, which happens to be the man you love, right?
Right.
So you have to decide to spend some time in grief, and that is not fun. But also hurting your husband over something he's not doing isn't fun either. And grief has a weird way of clarifying your next step. As David Kessler says, you end up finding meaning. Here's my next path. It's how after a young high school kid gets killed by a drunk driver, and after 3 or 4 years, his mom ends up starting a nonprofit, or his mom ends up going to speak at local high schools, or his dad goes back to law school, to whatever. You find your body directs you. You find meaning there. And that might be where you're like, you know what? For me and my house, we're going to choose joy and laughter. We're not going to choose to go back into this. So we're going to find other wise adults that honor our boundaries and that we love and that love us. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time. Because sadly for us, our families are opting out of relationship with us. Or after grieving, then it's like, you know what? We can just go to these things and roll our eyes. I don't really care if you're talking about politics or whatever. Give me an example of a thing they do that just makes you enraged.
Sometimes, so when we see them, sometimes they would comment on my kids, being either, they're too skinny for what they think they should weigh type thing. They would want to opine on my personal life, things like that.
Why do you care what they think? Why do you give them access to your inner core being like that?
That's where I struggle. I don't know how to block that.
You don't block
head.
it. It's not a blocking. It's just like I guess maybe it's a blocking. I'm trying to think of a mental model for that. It's not like you're Teflon. Those things like come into you, like they just don't register the same.
It's like when they say it, it just gets stuck with me that every time I see them, those conversations rerun in my head, and then I get all that build up emotionally.
Are they saying it because they don't like you and they're being mean? Or are they saying it because they genuinely care about those kids and think they need to fatten them up a little bit?
I think over the years, they always had a hard time accepting me as part of their family.
There you go.
Fine. It's been 15 years.
Whoa. It's not fine. It is not fine because you are... That is rippling through your relationship with them. They've never liked you. And they're never going to like your kids. They're not going to like how your kids look. They didn't like how you looked. They had a different picture of another woman in mind for their son, and he picked you. And they had another picture of what their grandkids were going to look like. Not the ones they got. Not those skinny little things. And so they have opted out. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what you and your husband have to do is really grieve that, because that's not supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be like that.
Yeah. And it breaks my heart because it hurts my husband.
Yes.
And the last thing I want to do is hurt him.
You're not. His parents are.
I know, but it's because of me, right?
Nope. He chose you. He loves you to the moon and back. He loves you to the end of time. It's because his parents act like children. And his parents don't actually fully love their son. His parents loved the role their son played in making their life perfect.
You're right about that. Very true about that.
They've been doing that to him his entire freaking life.
Yep.
And so what y'all have done is y'all verbalized a lot of boundaries, but you haven't lived them out. In a perfect world, your husband sits down with your parents and says, for 15 years, you have not accepted or loved my wife. And for 15 years, you've made little quips and comments and pokes and prods. And now those pokes and prods are rubbing off on my kids. And I let my wife down because I let it go on for years without saying anything or saying, hey, we don't like that, but not really doing anything about it. And now that I'm seeing it with my kids, I realize I was wrong to not get more vocal with my wife, and especially I'm going to draw a line with my kids. If y'all say these things again and don't fully accept my wife, don't fully accept my kids, don't fully accept our family, you are choosing for us to not come here. And we will get that message loud and clear. That's what he should say. And that is not a conversation for you to have. That's a conversation for him to have.
Right.
But until he decides to stop being a action figure in his mom and dad's little playhouse, they are going to continue to try to exert control over every aspect of his life. Even the appearance of his kids.
And we have made it clear over and over, and when they make comments.
I know, but you keep going. You keep showing up.
Yeah.
You keep showing up. You keep showing up. And that's not your parents have learned, they're all bark, no bite. They're all bark, they're not gonna actually leave. So we can do whatever we want. We're gonna continue to push and poke and poke and push and push and poke until one of the grandkids says something back. Or one day Rachel says something back. And then it's going to confirm it. See, told you she's a fill in the blank. Told you she's just like everyone else who fill in the blank. Don't give them that. Now, I also want to be careful because there's a whole ecosystem now. It's like if they don't whatever your boundaries, you just abandon them and run away. Not necessarily. This is 15 years. 15 years. And my gut tells me there's a racial component to this. There's all kinds of other layers to this that kind of oog me out, grosses me out, pisses me off. And especially when it rolls off of our son's supposed to make us happy and he didn't follow our directions. And so now we're going to throw grenades at his kids? No way. No way. No way. The job you have to do, Rachel, is grieve this, number one. Because it should be different. Your in-laws should be so excited that the son they raised, this man that they raised, with good judgment and character and kindness, picked you. And they should be so, even if you look different, you appear different, you are, whatever. They should be so excited that he's head over heels in love with her. And it looks different, but it's painting time because we're painting a new picture because this is our new life. We're going to get to know her and learn about her. And then when those kids come along, oh my gosh, you were big and huge and muscular when you were a kid and your kids are skinny little. That's a totally different conversation than, you know what, they should be. What are you feeding? Man, you're going to have to spend some time in grief. And you are going to have to open your hands up and realize that you can't control the world. And you're trying to control how your husband feels, how your in-laws feel. You can't. They're grown adults. But you do have to also decide, I'm going to stop spitting on my husband because his parents are children. I'm going to stop punching my husband metaphorically because his parents hurt my feelings. But you also have to sit down with your husband and say, we have to end this. We have to create some space here because it's hurting our marriage. It's hurting our relationship with our kids. And we can't let outside influences do that. Behavior is a language. And it sounds like your in-laws are telling you, we don't want you or those kids around. And if your husband has any integrity at all, he says, cool. Bye, Felicia. We gone. And he leaves. Hopefully he sits down with him and has a final direct conversation. But you're not the crazy one, Rachel. Spend some time in grief. Spend some time in heartache. Write him a letter. Don't ever, ever send it, but write him a letter about what you really feel and how heartbroken you are. That's step one. Then get a couple of friends and read it to him. That's step two.